With millions upon millions of units sold, Metallica's self-titled Black Album is one of the most successful records in metal history. And the secret to its popularity is simple: big ass riffs. But I feel like there are a handful of extremely killer riffs on this album that have flown under the radar for a lot of listeners. So on today's episode of Weekend Wankshop, we're going to be taking a look at the 5 most underappreciated riffs from the Black Album. Well, hey there kids, and welcome to a very special installment of Weekend Wankshop, here with your best buddy, Uncle Ben. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the 5 most underrated riffs from Metallica's Black Album. But this was not at all easy for me to kind of compile this list, and I left off a lot of the ones that everybody already worships, like the main riff from Sad But True and stuff like that. I tried to go for the ones that I just seem to never hear anybody playing in Guitar Center, but they're so freaking sick they deserve some attention. And as always, you guys can find full tabs for all these riffs over on my Instagram page at Ben Eller Guitars. Search for hashtag Weekend Wankshop 234, learn how to play all these sick riffs, and upload a video of you playing your favorites along with the hashtag Weekend Wankshop. And don't forget, if you like what you see in this video and elsewhere on my channel, be sure to drop me some love and support over on my Patreon page at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. There's all kinds of downloadable tabs and bonus lesson videos and stuff like that over there, so just select the tier that suits you the best and start reaping the rewards today. Now let us begin the Listomania. So the first riff on the list today comes from Holier Than Thou, which is one of my favorite tunes on the record. And honestly, I could have just put the main riff to the song on this list because I feel like it's pretty underappreciated. It's so pissed. So this riff is in 4 different segments. The first one here starts off on the upbeat of 4. So in other words, it doesn't start on the downbeat like the other segments do. It starts on the up of 4 of the previous measure. First segment here starts off with an open E power chord. That's my open low E string and my 2nd fret A. Then you're going to have some open low E string palm muted shenanigans. So that's a downstroke, a gallop, another gallop, and then one more downstroke. So it's single, gallop, gallop, single. Okay? Then you're going to play a G power chord here on 3 and 5 on the bottom 2 strings, no palm mute. And then you have some more low E stuff. So that was a single, downstroke, a gallop, and then another single. Okay? And then lastly, end by hitting an A power chord here on 5 and 7, and then move up a fret to a B flat here on 6 and 8, right in a row like that. Okay? So the first segment is sections 2 and 3 are almost the exact same thing. It just doesn't start on that pushed down beat, and it goes straight into 3 gallops in a row. So that's 3 gallops and a single downstroke like that. And then you do your G, A and B flat power chords like that. And again, that's segments 2 and 3. And then the 4th segment here has a little transition into the next segment of the solo by using that lick from the main riff, like that. And it's going to start off with the same gallops you did a second ago, then your G power chord. And this is where it goes into that little transition lick. And what you're going to do is hit the open A string and hammer onto the 1st fret. You're going to play the 3rd fret low E down here. Then you're going to pick the open A and then the 1st A. So that 4th segment has the gallops, the G, and that lick. Now at this point they go to like a G, Kirk solos over the G and stuff, but in my clip I just had it resolved to E, just to make it a little bit more clean and tidy. Number 2. Next one we're going to talk about here comes in right after the guitar solo in Don't Tread on Me. I've noticed Metallica kind of tends to do this a lot too. They put a really supremely sick riff right after the guitar solo in a lot of songs. The start of this riff features some open low E string palm muted gallop stuff punctuated with some power chords in between. And how you're going to start off all these figures is to play that open low E string very heavily palm muted, and you're going to do a single downstroke, then a gallop, and then a power chord. The first one here is an F here on the 1st and 3rd frets. No palm muting. And then 2 single downstrokes. So that's single, gallop, a power chord, 2 downstrokes. Next, do the same thing but with a G here on 3 and 5. Do the same thing next with an A here on 5 and 7. And then you have this first little ending. Now this is me playing the 6 on the low E string here. I pick that note with a downstroke and do a pull off. And then hit a palm muted low E. And then do the same deal but here on 5. So I'm doing the 5 on the low E string here with a pull off. And then another palm muted single note. So the first half of the riff is second half of the riff is almost the exact same thing. Do the gallopy stuff with the F, G, and A. And then play this ending. So this is the 6 pulling off to open, the 5 pulling off to open, and the 3 pulling off to open. So now you have this. 6, 5, 6, 5, 3. And then just play the first part of the riff again. That's where they go back into the last chorus of the song. Really cool, catchy riff. I do wonder what it would have sounded like though if Lars would have matched all those gallops and stuff on the kick drums. That could have been cool in kind of like a Meshuggah bleed kind of way. Number 3. And of course I had to include something from Sad But True. I mean, it's got the 2 heaviest chugs in the known universe in it. Little trivia too about those 2 noteworthy chugs. I never noticed this until I found the isolated bass track here on YouTube. Just search for Sad But True bass only or something like that and you'll find it. Whenever you listen to it, be sure to listen closely to the main riff and you'll hear that on just those 2 chugs, there is a baritone guitar tuned down to D. And that's not D like drop D, that's D like 2 whole steps lower than an 8-string guitar, like lower than Meshuggah low, that plays on just those 2 notes. I think that's definitely one of the secrets to the fatness and brutality of those noteworthy chugs. But we're talking about the verse riff today, which I find to be very underappreciated. It's one of my favorite riffs on the entire album. It's got this inverted power chord stuff, some really mean palm muting, flat 5 stuff. Just basically all of like the metal isms rolled into one big ass riff. Simple riff in 2 different sections. This first section here has an inverted power chord in it. It's just the open A and D strings. Sometimes I see people play this as like a full D power chord or like a power chord up here, you know? But it's even more simple than that. It's just the open A and D strings. Start off by playing a really heavily palm muted, heavily picked E power chord here. And I think he's doing a 3-note power chord in this case. So I've got my open E, my 2 on the A, and my 2 on the D. Both of those are just here under my first finger. And do this pattern where you're gonna have 2 slow chugs and then 2 fast chugs. Okay, so that's 2 slow, 2 fast. After this, come off of your palm mute and hit the open A and D strings. That's it, that's all he's doing right there. Then come back for 2 more slow chugs. Okay, so that's... And then before the second section of the riff starts, there's like a little pickup. Think of it as going and you know what I mean? So 2 more of those fast chugs. And Second section of the riff here is really simple. After you do those 2 pickup notes I was talking about, the and thing, you're just gonna play 3 regular old chugs on that E power chord, and then you're gonna play right here, 1st fret A string, 3rd fret D string. Again, that's that tritone, that devil's interval that makes that sound so evil and pissed. 2 more chugs, and then you do the same quick pickup notes at the end of that. Whole riff has got to sound something like this. that inverted power chord is the real secret sauce of what makes this thing sound so heavy. And the reason why it works so well is because essentially what's going on there is that the guitars are playing 2 notes of a power chord, and the bass is completing it by playing the root note in its register. It's hitting a low C note that we don't have access to here in our D standard tuning, but the bass is essentially grabbing that. So you can kind of think of it as the bass is playing that low C note while the guitars play those notes. So combined, it sounds like riff number 4. Next one on our list here comes from Through the Never, and kind of like what I was saying about Holier Than Thou, the main riff of this is one of my favorites on the entire album. It's kind of like Master of Puppets 2.0, you know what I mean? That one should totally be in that same book as, like, you know, Master of Puppets and Blackened and stuff like that, of riffs you need to work on if you're trying to improve your downstroke speed and ferocity. But we are talking about the super cool bridge riff that comes up in the song much later. It's got that awesome, like, Temple of Doom tribal drum kind of sound by Lars back there. This is a simple riff. It's just one thing repeated over and over with no variations. Start off with an E power chord, 2 palm muted E chugs. Gonna play a G power chord next here on 3 and 5, 2 chugs. And then what you're gonna do is, using your middle finger here, slide into the 6 on your low E string. I'm sliding from around 3 or so. Then go here to the 5 on your A, hit the A again on 5, and do a hammer on and pull off with 7. Okay? So it's important to notice you're hitting the 5th fret there 2 times. The second one has that hammer on and pull off with 7. Then after this, go back to the 6 on the low E string, pick that and slide down the neck. It's a pretty pronounced slide that he does. Don't let it just be a note like that. Hit the note and then drag your hand down towards the nut. Hey Dora, hi girl. One thing about this riff that I did find interesting too, that I had never noticed before, is the way that the bass drives this riff. I kind of assumed, like in typical metal fashion, that Jason would be doing, you know, just like the guitars and stuff did. But if you listen to the isolated bass track, you'll hear that what Jason plays is way more simple. He plays this. It's really simple, but it drives the groove in a cool way that you wouldn't have gotten if he just would have, you know, duplicated the guitar part. Adds cool stuff to the harmony too, because if you think about it, what Jason's playing is E, G, and B flat, and G, which is essentially like an E diminished triad. So it adds this really spooky kind of vibe underneath what, you know, the guitars are playing down there. I really like what that does to the harmony. Cool stuff that I just never noticed until I dug deep into those isolated tracks. And the last riff that we're going to talk about today is probably my favorite riff on the entire record. Actually, it's one of my favorites in the entire Metallica catalog. It's so pissed, it's so fast and aggressive, and it only goes by for like 10 seconds in the entire song and you never hear it again. But every time it gets to this section of The Struggle Within, I get amped up. Definitely one of the most underappreciated riffs on the whole album, and I'll go on record as saying I just think The Struggle Within is one of the most tragically overlooked Metallica songs that there is. It's so sick. It's got that epic intro, it's fast, it's super pissed, it's pretty complicated too. Those verse riffs and stuff are really confusing, and I love the chorus. It just slams, and it's also got a great solo by Kirk, one of his best in my opinion. This riff comes up right after the guitar solo. They play it like 2 times in a row, and that's it. You never hear it again. It's like 10 seconds of some of the most furious riffing in the Metallica catalog. There's an interesting technique they used to play this riff too, that's kind of a variation on the you know, the Dave Mustaine like spider fingers chord sort of thing. To get from the E to the G power chords, as you may have noticed in the video there, he's playing the E with the open low E string and his first finger on the 2nd fret A. And then to play the G, he's using his middle finger on the 3rd low E and his 4th finger on the 5th A. it's a seamless transition. You don't hear your hands move, you don't hear the notes cut out or anything like that. It's cool too because you can just hold your first finger down here on the 2nd fret and let your 2nd and 4th fingers do all the work for you. So after you do E, G, E, you're gonna have 4 just palm muted E power chords. Do that again. One more time. And then they do this descending chromatic power chord thing. To play that, come up here to 5 and 7 on your bottom 2 strings. There's your A power chord. And what you're gonna do is just chromatically walk this down fret by fret. So you're gonna go. So I'm taking both fingers down, 5 and 7, 4 and 6, 3 and 5. So you started at A and worked your way down. Next, start at G, which is where you are right now on 3 and 5, and work your way down from there. So you go 3 and 5, 2 and 4, 1 and 3. So it's like 5, 4, 3, 3, 2, 1. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 3, 2, 1. And that's the entire riff. They just repeat that twice, and that's all you ever get. And there at the very end of the riff, they're just doing the F power chord, 1 and 3, with some palm muting before they go back into the last verse of the song. That was 2 palm mutes and 1 not palm mute. So there you go, guys, my top 5 most underappreciated Metallica riffs from the Black Album. I'm sure there's a lot of you guys out there who are pissed that your favorite riff didn't get featured. Be sure to let me know in the comments below what you think should have been on this list that I left out. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for new content coming at you every single week. Follow me on Instagram at Ben Eller Guitars or on Facebook.com/Uncle Ben Eller. And if you enjoyed what you saw in this video, be sure to support me on Patreon, patreon.com/Ben Eller Guitars. Thanks for watching. Now get away from this dang old computer and go play yourself some guitar. Less clicking, more picking.